There is a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when the narcissist finally understands that you are not coming back, not taking space, not cooling down, not waiting to be persuaded or charmed or guilt-tripped into returning. Gone, permanently, completely, irrevocably gone. And in that moment, something happens inside them that they will never admit to anyone, including themselves. Because the narcissist has spent the entire relationship engineering a reality where they are always the one with the power, always the one who decides when things start and when things end, always the one holding the door open or closed. And now, without warning, without their permission, without any of the control they believed was theirs by right, the door has been closed from the other side by you. What follows is not grief in any way you would recognize it. It is not the clean, honest pain of someone who has lost something they valued and is now reckoning with that loss. It is something far more complicated, far more dangerous, and far more revealing of exactly who the narcissist has always been beneath every mask they wore for you. What follows is a silent war fought entirely inside the architecture of their own psychology, against the one truth they cannot afford to accept, that you saw them fully, completely, without illusion. You saw what they did and who they were, and you chose yourself anyway. That truth is the most threatening thing the narcissist has ever faced, more threatening than any argument, any confrontation, any ultimatum you ever issued during the relationship. Because those things they could manage, they could deflect your arguments, gaslight your confrontations, ignore your ultimatums, but they cannot manage your absence. They cannot manipulate someone who is no longer in the room. So the war begins, and the first thing the narcissist does before anything else, before any of the behaviors you may have already noticed or are about to recognize, is attempt to reframe what happened. Not for your benefit, not even primarily for the benefit of others, but for their own psychological survival. Because here is what most people don't understand about narcissists. Their entire internal world is built on a story, a very specific story in which they are exceptional, misunderstood, deserving of more than they have ever received, and never under any circumstances at fault. Every relationship they enter gets written into this story. And every relationship that ends has to be written out of it in a way that preserves the narrative. When a relationship ends because they chose to leave, that is easy. The story writes itself. They moved on. They outgrew someone. They made a powerful decision. Their identity survives intact. But when you leave, when someone who knows them as deeply as you do makes a clear, deliberate, final decision to walk away, the story is in crisis because your departure is a verdict, not spoken, not argued, not negotiated, just rendered. And the narcissist cannot live inside that verdict. They are constitutionally incapable of sitting with the reality that someone chose to leave them and was right to do so. So they begin to rewrite, and the revision is not subtle. It is total. It is sweeping. It reaches back through every chapter of the relationship and retroactively changes the meaning of every scene. The fights you had, the moments you cried, the times you begged for basic decency and were denied, all of it gets reclassified, reinterpreted, re-arisoned. In the new version, they were always the steady one, and you were always the unstable one. They were the one who tried, and you were the one who gave up. They were the one who loved with depth and maturity, and you were the one who couldn't handle the complexity of a real relationship. Every time they raged, it was because you provoked them. Every time they withdrew, it was because you were suffocating them. Every time they humiliated you, it was because you needed to be challenged to grow. They construct this alternative history with the precision of someone whose psychological survival depends on it, because it does. And here is the detail that makes this so deeply unsettling. They are not entirely lying, not in the way a calculated deceiver lies. They are not building a false story on top of a true one they secretly remember. They are actually beginning to believe the revision. The brain does this. Under enough psychological pressure, under sufficient threat to identity, human beings rewrite memory. They don't just change the story they tell. They change the story they remember. And for the narcissist, whose entire defense system is oriented around self-protection at all costs, this revision happens faster and more completely than it would in anyone else. Within weeks of accepting that you are gone, they have constructed a version of events so internally consistent, so emotionally convincing to themselves, that they can narrate it with what feels like genuine conviction. And this matters for you, because it means that if you ever encounter them again, through mutual friends, through circumstance, through whatever cracks might exist in the distance you have created, you will not encounter someone who secretly knows the truth and is hiding it. You will encounter someone who has rewritten the truth so thoroughly that the original version has become genuinely inaccessible to them. They will seem certain, they will seem calm, they will seem like someone who has processed the relationship and arrived at clarity. But the clarity they have arrived at is the clarity of someone who has chosen story over reality, comfort over honesty, and self-preservation over the kind of reckoning that could have actually changed them. That is the first thing the narcissist does when they know you are never coming back. They make sure, in the deepest architecture of their own psychology, that your leaving was never really your choice at all. The revision is complete. The story has been rewritten. The narcissist has successfully repositioned themselves, at least internally, as the one who was never truly left. But now comes a problem they did not anticipate, because a story, no matter how convincingly told, still has to hold up against the evidence of daily life. And daily life without you in it is not cooperating with the narrative. The narcissist claimed control. The narcissist rewrote themselves as the one who let you go, who chose this outcome, who was always the more evolved person in the relationship. But if that is true, if they are as exceptional as the story requires them to be, then why does everything feel so destabilized? Why are they struggling to regulate emotions that you use to quietly manage for them? Why does the apartment feel different, the routine feel hollow, the reflection in the mirror feels somehow less confirmed than it did when you were there to witness them every day? Because here is what the narcissist loses when they lose you, that they will never openly acknowledge. They lose their mirror. You were not just a partner, you were a regulator, a stabilizer, a daily living source of reflection that confirmed their identity, absorbed their chaos, and made the story of who they are feel real and witnessed and true. Without you, the story has no audience, and a story with no audience begins to feel dangerously unreal. So the narcissist moves into the second phase of what unfolds when they accept you are never coming back. They begin to perform. And this performance is so calculated, so visible, so perfectly timed, that if you are still connected to any shared social world, you will almost certainly witness some version of it. Suddenly, the person who spent years dismissing every suggestion that they needed to grow, every gentle request that they reflect on their behavior, every careful conversation you tried to have about patterns that were hurting you, that person is now publicly, loudly, visibly committed to their own evolution. They are in therapy. They want you to know they are in therapy, not because healing is private and sacred and genuinely oriented toward change, but because therapy is a signal. It is a credential. It is something they can point to and say, look, I heard you. I am doing the work. I have become the person you always asked me to be. The books appear, the journal, the workshop they attended, the podcast about emotional intelligence they have been listening to, the Instagram post with a quote about accountability and growth that they share without apparent irony. All of it is timed. All of it is visible. All of it is designed to travel through whatever channels still connect your worlds and land in your awareness as a single devastating message. You left too soon. I was already changing. You gave up right before the breakthrough. This is the cruelty of the performance. And it is cruelty whether or not they are fully conscious of it, because it is designed to plant doubt inside your healing. It is designed to find the part of you that spent years hoping they would change, the part that stayed longer than you should have because you kept believing the next version of them was coming. and whisper directly into that wound. What if this time it is real? And here is what you need to understand with absolute clarity. It is not real, not because people cannot change. People can and do change. Genuine transformation is one of the most profound things a human being can experience and witness. But genuine transformation does not look like this. Genuine transformation is quiet. It is unglamorous. It is the slow, painful, deeply uncomfortable work of sitting with shame about who you have been and what you have done to people who deserve better. It does not announce itself on social media. It does not perform for an absent audience. It does not emerge fully formed and highly visible in the weeks immediately following the departure of the person whose opinion you most want to influence. Real change does not arrive on cue. The narcissist transformation arrives exactly on cue. And if you look closely past the surface of the performance, you will see that nothing beneath it has actually shifted. They are in therapy, but they are performing for the therapist. They are using the therapeutic space not to dismantle their defenses, but to rebuild them with more sophisticated materials. They are learning the language of psychology, words like boundaries, attachment, emotional regulation, accountability, and they are learning how to use those words in ways that sound like self-awareness without requiring any actual self-confrontation. They are learning what a changed person says. They are not becoming one. The books they are reading about narcissism are being read the way a suspect reads about forensics. Not to understand themselves, but to understand how they appear. To learn what behaviors to minimize in public, what language to adopt, what performances to offer that will make the people around them believe the story of their evolution. And the new relationships, because there will be new relationships, entered quickly, displayed prominently, those are not evidence of healing either. They are evidence of the opposite. A person who has done genuine work on themselves after a significant relationship does not immediately seek replacement. They sit with themselves. They tolerate the discomfort of their own company. They allow the absence to teach them something. The narcissist cannot do this. The narcissist requires supply the way the rest of us require oxygen, and a prolonged absence of it creates a psychological emergency that no amount of performed self-improvement can resolve. So they find someone new, and they make sure the world sees how happy they are, how healthy the new relationship looks, how effortlessly they have moved forward. But move forward is the wrong phrase entirely, because moving forward requires leaving something behind. And the narcissist has left nothing behind. They have simply relocated their patterns into a new container and decorated the outside of that container with the language of growth. The performance continues until it collapses under its own weight. It always does, because you cannot sustain a transformation you have not actually undergone. You cannot maintain the appearance of change indefinitely when the thing that needed to change has never been touched. Eventually, the mask slips. Eventually, the person behind the performance reappears, and the people watching closely, the new partner, the therapist who has been paying careful attention, the friends who know them well enough to see past the presentation, they begin to notice the gap between the story and the reality. But by then, the narcissist has usually moved on to the next phase, because the performance was never meant to last forever. It was only ever meant to reach you. The revision is complete. The performance is underway, and now something shifts in the narcissist's internal landscape that is perhaps the most disorienting thing you will ever hear about how they experience your absence. Because while they are Aussie rewriting history and performing transformation for an audience they hope includes you, they are simultaneously doing something that seems to directly contradict both of those strategies. They are turning you into a myth. The person they spent months or years devaluing, dismissing, criticizing, and diminishing is now being spoken about in an entirely different register, with reverence, with longing, with a kind of hushed, almost sacred grief that signals to everyone around them that what was lost here was not just a relationship, but something rare and irreplaceable and cosmically significant. You were the one. That is the story now. Not the person who was too sensitive. Not the one who could never just relax. Not the one who asked for too much or gave too little or failed to appreciate what they had. Now you are the great love, the deepest connection they have ever known, the relationship that mattered more than anything, before or since. And if you are hearing this through mutual friends, through the social channels that still faintly connect your worlds, your first instinct might be confusion, because you remember what it actually felt like to be in that relationship. You remember the coldness, the contempt, the way your needs were treated as inconveniences and your feelings were treated as performances. You remember trying to reach them and hitting a wall so many times that eventually you stopped trying and started planning your exit instead. And now they are telling people you were the love of their life. So what is happening here? Why does the narcissist suddenly mythologize the person they once treated as disposable? The first thing to understand is that this romanticization is not about you. It was never about you. It is about what your permanent absence has created inside them. Because when you were present, you were a source of supply. You provided validate, ion, attention, emotional regulation, and the daily confirmation of their identity that they require to function. But you were also a threat, a real, present, breathing human being with needs of your own, with perceptions that sometimes contradicted theirs, with a perspective that occasionally reflected back something they did not want to see. Real people are inconvenient for narcissists. Real people have edges and limits and truths that resist being managed. But you, in your absence, you as a memory they can curate and control, you as a frozen, idealized image that exists only in the story they are now telling. That version of you is perfect. That version of you never sets a boundary, never asks for accountability, never reflects back something uncomfortable, never leaves. The mythologized you is the ultimate supply source because they have complete control over who you are in the story. They can make you as loving, as understanding, as devoted as they need you to be. They can edit out every moment where you pushed back, every conversation where you named what was happening, every instance where you refused to participate in your own diminishment. In the myth, you are everything they needed and everything they lost. And that myth serves them in multiple ways simultaneously. It explains why no subsequent relationship has felt right. It is not that they are fundamentally incapable of sustaining genuine intimacy. It is not that their patterns destroy every connection that gets close enough to threaten their defenses. It is simply that they already had the perfect person and lost them. The bar has been set impossibly high by someone impossibly perfect. Everyone else fails to clear it, not because the narcissist is the problem, but because you were genuinely irreplaceable. This is a profoundly convenient story. It takes every relational failure that follows your departure and reframes it as a tribute to what you had together. Every new person who eventually leaves or gets pushed away becomes further evidence of your uniqueness rather than evidence of their pathology. They are not destroying relationships. They are simply unable to settle for less than what they had with you. And in a strange, inverted way, this myth elevates them too. Because to have loved someone as exceptional as the mythologized version of you, to have been chosen by someone of that depth and quality, to have experienced a connection that rare, that reflects well on them, it confirms their own exceptionalism. Of course their love story was the greatest. Of course no one else could compare. They are, after all, someone capable of recognizing and attracting that kind of rare human being. The myth flatters them even as it mourns you, but there is something else happening beneath all of this that is more psychologically complex and more quietly devastating. The narcissist is also using the myth to punish you, not overtly, not consciously perhaps, but the elevation of you to legendary status in their narrative is a way of keeping you tethered to a story you never agreed to be part of. By making you the great lost love, they are still writing you, still defining what the relationship meant, still maintaining a form of authorship over your shared history, even though you have withdrawn your participation entirely. They tell new partners about you, positioning themselves as someone still carrying the wound of an extraordinary loss. They mark the anniversaries of things that mattered in the relationship. They keep objects, photographs, evidence of your time together in ways that signal ongoing mourning. And all of this is a form of possession, a way of holding on to you through narrative when they can no longer hold on to you through presence. It is also on a level they will net. Ver consciously acknowledge a form of ongoing control. Because if you hear, as you likely will, that they are still not over you, that they speak about you with reverence, that no one has come close to what you had together, some part of you is meant to feel the weight of that. Some part of you is meant to wonder whether leaving was a kind of destruction, whether you owed them more time, more patience, more attempts. The myth is designed to reach you as guilt, as doubt, as the quiet, corrosive question of whether the love being described from a distance was always there, and you simply failed to find it in time. Here is what you need to hold on to when that doubt arrives. The love being described now in your absence, in the safety of a story they fully control, is not the love that was available to you when you were present. Presence requires reciprocity. Presence requires accountability. Presence requires showing up for a real person with real needs, rather than an idealized image that exists only in memory. The narcissist could not love you when you were there, because loving you when you were there would have required them to be someone they were unwilling to become. They can love the myth of you now, precisely because the myth asks nothing of them. The myth never needs anything. The myth never holds them accountable. The myth never leaves. And that is the only version of you they were ever truly comfortable with. Not the real you who saw them clearly and ultimately chose herself, but the curated, controlled, forever frozen image of you that lives in the story they tell now, that you are finally permanently gone. The myth is constructed. The performance is running. The history has been rewritten so completely that the narcissist can narrate it with something that feels even to them like genuine conviction. And yet, despite all of this internal architecture, despot, every defensive strategy their psychology has deployed to manage the reality of your permanent departure, there is still a problem. You are out there living, breathing, building something without them, moving through a world they no longer have access to. And the narcissist who has spent the entire relationship requiring your attention as a baseline condition of their own stability cannot simply accept that your attention now belongs entirely to you. So they begin to reach, not directly, not in ways that are easy to name or confront or block, but through the invisible channels that remain between two people who once shared a life, through the social infrastructure of mutual friendships and overlapping communities and shared histories that do not simply dissolve because a relationship ends. They begin what can only be described as a campaign of indirect presence, a quiet, persistent, carefully deniable effort to ensure that even in your healing, even in the deliberate distance you have created, you cannot fully escape the awareness that they still exist and that your existence still matters to them. It starts with the mutual friends. Suddenly, people you have known for years, people who care about you genuinely and have no idea they are being used, begin mentioning the narcissist in conversation with you, casually, almost incidentally. They have been asking about you. They mention they hope you are doing well. They said they think about you sometimes and wish things had ended differently. These messages arrive dressed in the language of goodwill. They sound like the natural overflow of a shared social world, where people who once knew each other still occasionally surface in conversation. But they are not accidental. The narcissist has been deliberate. They have mentioned you to these people in ways that were designed to travel back. They have expressed just enough visible emotion, just enough wistfulness or concern or lingering feeling that the people who care about both of you feel moved to pass the message along. And the message, stripped of its packaging, is always the same. I am still here. I still think about you. You have not been forgotten. The mutual friends are not villains in this. Most of them are genuinely trying to be kind. They believe they are building a bridge, facilitating some kind of peaceful resolution, maybe even planting a seed that could lead to healing or closure between two people they care about. They do not understand that they are being used as delivery systems, that the apparent goodwill is a vehicle for something far more calculated, that every message they carry back to you is a small, carefully placed disruption in the peace you're trying to build. And here is why this is so insidious. It works even when you see it clearly, even when you recognize exactly what is happening, even when you understand the mechanism and can name it without hesitation, the disruption still lands. Your nervous system does not care about your intellectual clarity. Your body still registers the mention of their name. Your mind still briefly returns to someone you have been working hard to release. The narcissist knows this. They are counting on the gap between what you understand and what you feel. They are exploiting the fact that awareness and immunity are not the same thing. Beyond the mutual friends, there are the engineered coincidences. The narcissist begins appearing in spaces that belong to you. The coffee shop you mentioned once, in passing, the professional events in your industry, the neighborhood you moved to, the gym you joined, the social gatherings that exist at the edges of your new life. And every appearance comes with the same protective coating of plausible deniability. What a surprise. I had no idea you would be here. I was not following you. I was just living my life and our paths happened to cross. But paths do not cross this consistently by accident. The narcissist has been paying attention. They have been collecting the small pieces of information about your life that filter through mutual connections and public presence. And they have been using those pieces to construct a map of where you are and when you are likely to be there. Each appearance is a reminder, a physical, undeniable confirmation that they still exist in your world, whether you have chosen that or not. Each encounter, however brief, however apparently innocent, serves to reactivate neural pathways that you have been quietly working to let go quiet. It puts their face back in your recent memory. It makes them present in a way that days of careful distance had almost begun to undo. Then there is the information that flows through the network in both directions. The narcissist is not only sending messages toward you, they are also collecting intelligence about your life with a dedication that would be alarming if it were visible. They ask about you in ways that seem like normal social curiosity. How is she doing? Did you see him at that thing last week? I heard they started something new. How is that going? Each question is casual enough that the person being asked does not register it as surveillance. It sounds like someone maintaining ordinary human interest in a person who was once important to them. But the information gathered is not being used the way ordinary human interest uses information. It is being cataloged, analyzed, fed into the ongoing narrative the narcissist is constructing about your life without them. Are you struggling? Are you thriving? Are you in a new relationship? Do you seem happy? Every data point gets interpreted through the lens of what it means for their story. Your difficulty becomes evidence that you needed them. Your success becomes something to be competed with or quietly claimed credit for. Nothing you do in your actual life remains simply yours. Everything gets annexed into the story they are still telling about the two of you, even though the two of you no longer exist. And in some cases, the indirect campaign escalates beyond information gathering into something more active. The narcissist begins the quiet work of shaping how your shared community understands what happened between you. They tell their version of the story, not aggressively, not in ways that are obviously designed to damage you, but persistently, sympathetically, always positioning themselves as someone who tried their best and was ultimately failed by circumstances or by your limitations. They are not spreading lies exactly, they're spreading interpretations, framings, versions of events that are technically constructed from real moments, but assembled in ways that lead inevitably to conclusions that protect them and cast doubt on you. By the time you share your experience with someone in your shared social world, there is already a counter-narrative waiting, already a seed of doubt that has been planted, already a version of events that makes your truth sound like one perspective among several, rather than a clear account of what actually happened. This is reputation management dressed as natural conversation. And it is one of the most sophisticated tools in the narcissist's arsenal because it operates entirely through indirection. They never have to confront you. They never have to defend themselves directly. They simply ensure that the environment around you is quietly, persistently shaped in ways that make your reality harder to stand in with full confidence. All of these strategies, the proxy messages, the engineered appearances, the intelligence gaze, ring the narrative management. They are unified by a single underlying purpose. The narcissist cannot have you. They have accepted that. But they cannot tolerate your complete indifference either. They cannot bear the thought of you moving through your life in a state of genuine peace where they do not register as a presence at all. Your anger they could work with. Your grief they could interpret as evidence of love. Your ongoing hurt would at least confirm that what happened between you mattered, that they still occupy space in your emotional world. But your indifference, your complete, settled, undramatic release of them from your inner life, that is the thing they cannot survive. So they work through every available indirect channel to ensure that indifference remains just beyond your reach, to keep themselves present in your awareness through the only means still available to them, not through your choice, not through your invitation, but through the persistent, deniable, carefully orchestrated contamination of the peace you are trying so hard to build.